And welcome back to our next episode of the Big Gay Overalls podcast. And I'm super excited not to be flying solo again today, but I have the one and only Jen Fatanen on the podcast sitting aside me. I'm so excited for this chat. So, firstly, welcome.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
I know we've kind of become fast friends when we connected on Threads and Instagram and the places, but, I've was immediately drawn to your energy and your podcast. So Jen is a coach, podcaster, cheerleader, and all
project
things about project manager. And like one of the things that I loved, and I thought this is definitely my person, is the fact that fuck is one of your favorite words after freedom, and that's really one of my words. And even like the attitude around your podcast, living your best damn life one fuck year at a time. I was like, that's my podcast. I need to listen to that. So I knew we were going to be friends. So I'm so excited that you are able to come onto the show. And I know that you have such an amazing story, and I'm interested to dig into that today and share some of your perspectives with the people in my audience who are, probably dealing with coming out late in life, which is, my journey that I'm talking about, but also understanding that it's okay to embrace your life and live your best life and be excited about that and get rid of the expectations from other people. And you are just the person, I think. That's your jam.
Oh, thank you. It is. And those are some very hard-won lessons that took me 5 decades to learn. So it's not a quick thing.
It's not. But and I love the fact that you did a post recently saying, you're fascinated with, as you get older, a lot of people hide from that and go, oh, I'm getting older, or, I'm closer to the end than the beginning. But you're like, I'm fascinated by how my mind's changing, my body's changing, my perspectives and beliefs. I think that that's a really powerful thing to have.
I'm laughing, Lisa, because I just stayed in a hotel room for the last couple of nights. I had my team in town, and this may be TMI, but this is also how I roll. I'm on the toilet and I looked down at my thighs, and like the way they were creping together, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like my arms are doing that, but now my legs are. And I'm like, whoa. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't scare me. It fascinates me. And I get why it scares other people. But for me, I think I have such a self-deprecating, humorous approach that I just find it kind of funny.
Yeah.
And I can't do anything about it.
No, and we tend to fight it, don't we? We tend to have this attitude of like, oh, I'm just going to go into denial about it, but it's still going to happen. So you may as well look at it with a bit of curiosity, going, oh, that's what's happening today.
That's interesting that my body, like my skin does this weird crepey thing. So
yeah, I had a realization the other day of a good friend of mine that I've known since I was like 14, just turned 80. And I used to travel a lot with this group of women when we played golf, and I was like, less than 20, like I was young compared to them. And they were in their 50s at that time, I realize now, and they were going through like probably perimenopause, menopause. And I'd be like, oh God, if I get to that age, I'm if this happens to me, I'm slashing my wrists.
Yeah.
And I realized when she turned 80, I went, shit, I was at her 50th. I'm now the age she was at when we had that lunch. And I went, oh, okay, cool. This is, And now I'm going through similar things. I'm like, I was an asshole to you. And I have actually sent them a message. I went, yeah, I'm really sorry for what 20-year-old me did. I was an asshole. I'm terrible. And now I'm like, oh, this is new today. Oh, now I understand a little bit about what's happening for them. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just with a team I worked with a bunch of software developers. They're in their 20s, 30s. They're just having babies. My baby is 20. We are not the same.
Yeah.
But I love working with such young energy and new perspective. And I learned from them. They learned from me. I love it so much. But I see these TikToks of, millennials will be like, I hate working with Gen Xers. They're the worst. And I'm just like, I'm not the worst. Like, I'm like your fun older aunt. Come on.
Yeah. You can tell
I don't take it personally, but I'm like, come on, we're not all bad.
No, we're not, and we're the cool ones that you can tell anything to. It's not going to shock us because we probably
exactly
already did it, because our parents, a generation before us, probably didn't do it. We did
exactly.
it.
We did it. Yeah.
We probably invented it. So let's go with
that. There's t-shirts that show like all the things we did in our youth that we probably shouldn't have survived. And yet here we are, because we're very strong people.
Yeah, we are. And I love the fact that, we got to live most of our lives without social media and cameras, phones.
Oh my gosh.
Like, thank you, baby Jesus, because
thank you, sweet baby Jesus.
That's a lot of explaining of things. Whereas now it's like no evidence that have ever happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about your journey, how you got to where you are now, I guess. That's a big question, given that you've got a lifetime.
54.
You kind of have a very diverse sort of set of skills and experiences and things that you're involved in. Mm-hmm. So, maybe even get through like what got you to the coaching people in about, embracing their best damn life and being, a powerhouse, speaker and motivator and those sort of things. What led you to that realization that I can do this?
Yeah. That's a great question. My whole adult life, even going back to high school, I was the one who would very often take people under my wing. I've always been looked at as a mentor and a leader when I started my big girl career, my adult career. I think I'm a natural coach and mentor. Not that I have all of my stuff figured out. I absolutely do not, right? But I think the things I'm really good at, I do own, right? And I do own my very humanness and all of that. And so I've worked a corporate career for 30 plus years. And through that, I've done so much coaching and mentoring, right? And so when I started, what I want to say there is I always felt a bit like a fraud. Like, why do these people look up to me? Why are they coming to me for advice? Why did, not that anyone put me on a pedestal, but why do they see me as this very valuable individual? Because inside, because of my childhood and the stories I took away from that and experiences, I felt anything but, to the degree that I actually had this story from childhood from my mom that I was not a very good, kind person. And so I would keep everyone at a distance, and I would have the strong, confident persona, but inside I was a shell of a person. Right. And so once I had a couple of things happen in 2015, and I can absolutely go into them if you want to, but a couple of things that had me realize that that saying, wherever you go, there you are.
Oh my Lord,
it's me. I'm the problem.
Yeah.
It was these two things happened that made me realize, oh shit, like I'm on this path. And I literally saw myself at 80 being this bitter old woman, angry, resentful, lonely. No one came to her funeral. And like, I would lay awake at night. This is how sad it was. I would lay awake at night with that thought, no one's going to come to my funeral. How embarrassed my children will be that no one shows up for me. And I didn't, it was like this wake up of like, I don't want to be that person. And so I started doing my own healing. It took 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 years. This was in 2015. It's now 2024 as I'm recording this, right? I'm on the other side of that. I have been for quite a while. And so now I'm really stepping into the leadership of being that coach, that mentor that I've always naturally been. Now I feel worthy of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense. And it's, interesting what you say there about, you're a coach for other people, but you always felt like you didn't have, your ducks lined up, but you do own what you have. And that's the beauty, I think, of coaching. And like I work as a business coach for another company. And, one of our things is we don't tell our clients what to do, because that's advice, and that's becoming a guru or a, snake oil salesman. So for us as coaches, you don't need to have everything lined up. You can just ask questions, which help people. We all know our own answers. We just need to help, like, as you said, get out of our own way. And by having a coach sit externally to you, they can see through your bullshit that you're like not digging through and go, well, hey, why do you do that? And why does that matter to you? And it doesn't matter what we've done. Like our life experience through doing the work and doing our healing lets us then ask the questions, and we know that those are important questions rather than me saying, hey, you just need to do this and that'll fix all your problems, because that's not, people think they want the answers, but when you give them the answers, they really don't want the answers.
That was a hard lesson I had to learn. I'm such, my project management background, I am a natural fixer. Like, I see problems. I know how to pull people together. I don't always know how to solve them, but I know how to pull the people together and keep them focused on solving the problem, right?
Yep.
I used to apply that to people.
Yeah.
People don't want to be fixed.
They'll tell you they do, and they think they do.
Yeah, they think they do. And I mean, that's probably about 5 years ago that I finally understood, oh, my job is not to fix people. It's to help them pull out the answers that they have. Absolutely. And that, that shifts something in your coaching, right? When you're no longer trying to be, not that I was like, oh, I'm the savior, but it's almost that savior energy. And that's not a healthy energy. It's clingy and weird.
It is. And it makes, some people who call themselves coaches, do that because they want their clients to be dependent on them, then they'll never leave.
Yeah.
But what you need is that your client is going to be able to go and, leave the nest, do their own thing. It's like, you don't want your kids living with you forever.
Dear God, no.
The idea is you want them to be stronger and more empowered so they can go and do the thing, and then they can come back and check into you when they want to. If you've got that, if they've got like almost a codependent relationship, then that's a weird icky space. And it's like,
yeah, I don't do codependent. I mean, I understand. I've done the work to not do that. Yes. But it's like I said, in my corporate life, I've coached, and I've had the title of coach. I was an agile coach. And for those listening, that's a software development methodology. Actually, it's used in lots of industries, but it's just a methodology for how we get shit done, right?
Yep.
But when I was an agile coach, my whole thing was going into a team. My goal was to work myself out of that role, because it was to make that team autonomous, right? And that's what I bring to my own coaching. And that's what you're talking about, is like, my job is to get you to where you trust and believe in yourself and your decision-making. And that if there is something that goes awry, you trust and believe in yourself enough to pivot, right? That it's not like, oh my gosh, I screwed up, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. And it's that, you can borrow belief from me as your coach. And then once you've got your own, that's the idea. Like, this is not that you're going to keep borrowing mine. The goal is that we should build you up to the point where you own your own results. If I just give you the answers and you go do it and it doesn't work, you go, well, that was your fault. And then I say, well, it's worked for 50 other people, so I don't know why it didn't work for you. That must be your problem.
Yeah. And now we're like blaming.
Yeah. Whereas this is your solution, you created it. Like, if that's important to you and your why and where you want to go, whether it be personal or professional, then let's run into the fire together. But you're going to be able to do that yourself. I'm just going to be your biggest cheerleader at the side. And I think that's a really powerful shift in the relationship. And what I see, and it really fucking annoys me, is, the term coach gets misused a lot because every man and Moses thinks that they're a coach or a coach. And they create these Facebook groups. And particularly when we're talking about the I don't know if I'd describe it a field or the group I'm involved in with women who are particularly coming out as lesbian late in life. So they're either going through it, coming out the other side, or they're still questioning, or they don't even know where to start. And these people start these groups just to harvest clients, not to build a community of support where it's like, hey, pay $5 to come to my coffee catch-up chat and, do this, or I've got this group, and no one can share any other content in the group, but then they're like, oh, but here's all my stuff. I'll share my stuff. And that's why I've created it. And I'm like, that's not coaching. You've created this group not to provide a space of connection where people don't feel so alone. It's a harvesting group.
It's a sales pipeline.
Yeah. And it's so frustrating because, then everybody, if I say to people that I'm a coach and, I do it completely aside, Big Gay Overalls is not about that. It's just about me telling my story. But if I then say, I do some coaching and stuff, you just get associated with the gurus and the snake oil salesmen and that. And so people get the ick straight away.
Yeah. I mean, it's taken me forever to adopt that title of coach. I still get the ick, and I'm like, but that's what I do. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's just, I'm going to own it.
It's just hard. And to have, when you want to create a space where people can have authentic conversations, and that's why I love your podcast. You're like, hey, I'm a hot mess right now. This is the stuff that I've struggled with. And that's okay to say that. It doesn't have to be this perfectly curated piece of content where you've got a script and you're sitting there and just going through it. Like, someone said to me the other day, how do you like write up your podcast? I went, write up my podcast.
What? Like,
I said, I just turn it on and go, oh, I want to talk about this today, and hit record. And whatever comes out, comes out. And there's so much manufactured. But when you then start to move into coaching, you're having these authentic conversations, people are still waiting for, well, what's the trick? What's the sale? What are you selling me? Nothing. I just want to tell your story.
Yeah. I would do this shit for free until my dying day. Again, it's just whatever I have been gifted with. It has been the gift of creating a very safe, very non-judgmental space. I am both nurturing and ass kicking, and you decide how hard, right?
Yeah.
It's like I have this blend that just works for me and my clients.
And the right people who are your people will be drawn to you the more authentic you are. I actually
and trust me, I detract my not right people. Like I repel them pretty good.
Yeah, and that's the power of when you're authentic, isn't it? So, I was actually talking to my coach the other day about, well, I've launched, several different initiatives and nothing has ever happened. That is like dead crickets. I said, I started this podcast. I haven't promoted it, really. I created an Instagram and a Threads. I said, and this thing is like, it's adding followers and people are commenting more so than anything. And they went, well, duh, it's because you're being authentic. Yeah. So the right people then like gravitate to that rather than feeling like, oh, there's Lisa selling me something again. And I'm like, oh, I get it. And I think that's what drew me to some of your stuff as well. Originally, when I saw the algorithm connected us, however it does magically. And it was just real and authentic. And I was like, and you find your tribe doing that.
Absolutely. I was just with the CEO of my company the last couple of days, and she is this gorgeous, gorgeous Indian woman. And, I'm so many levels below her, right? But she never makes me feel like that. And we're in the bar and I'm telling her how absolutely gorgeous she is. And she's just, she's like, thank you. And, she's like, I can't believe you're 54. And we're just having this very real conversation. And afterwards, I was like, okay, I don't know if I should have been telling our CEO like how gorgeous she is, but then I'm like, no, it was so genuine and from the heart, and that is who I choose to be. And yes, that I attract the right people to me, and some people, maybe many, roll their eyes and like, oh, there she goes again, right? And I'm like, I don't care. I don't exist for those people. I exist to help the people who do resonate and are ready to take action and just want some support. And I have a feeling you do too.
Yeah, absolutely. And, taking the wrong clients, which I've done in the past.
Me too.
You immediately, when you've done it just because you're like, well, I need to make some money at the moment, someone wants to throw money. And then it's always the biggest pain in your ass.
The worst.
Literally 20 minutes after, you're like, actually, this is going to be, and I've got better at looking at something and actually saying, you know what, this is going to be a pain in my butt. Doesn't align with me.
Yep.
No. And then something better always replaces it like 100% of the time.
Absolutely. Well, I used to, sorry, Lisa.
No, you go. I just said, if you're open to it and you're prepared to say no to the wrong things, it's amazing how many right things will turn up on your doorstep.
Yeah, I've been getting invited to. So this year, something again just really clicked for me. I've been saying like 50s are it's my decade. I'm coming into my own. And I feel like I arrived earlier this year. But it's this magnetic energy. And this is what I saw in you too, right? This magnetic energy, but I have people coming out of the woodwork inviting me to be on summits. And I'm like, I'm flattered. Don't get me wrong. But there's a lot I'm saying no to, because when I look at who they are and their audience and maybe some of the guests that they're having in, they're all wonderful people. Don't get me wrong. but it's not necessarily aligned with who I am and where I want to go, the values and the integrity that I hold for myself. Right. And I think that is so much of my message. And what my most recent podcast episode is about is like, you get to define your unique definition of success in life. Right. And when I listed mine, I said, no, nowhere in there is money. Right. It's not what motivates me. I love money, but it's not what motivates me. Right. And so having that I call it definition of success. Maybe it has a better term, but having that so solid in your mind and then guiding your life with that, even though I wanted to say yes to some of these, I knew that if I did in the long run, I wouldn't feel good about it. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's like catching yourself and like, oh, do I really want this? Ooh, I don't think I do. And then being okay with saying no and missing out on something that maybe would have been fun in the moment, but ultimately not what you really want for yourself.
And when you think about things that will drain your energy rather than fill your cup, it makes it so much easier to say no to something. You're like, you know what?
Yeah. Sorry, my dogs are barking. I'm so sorry.
Okay. I'm waiting for mine to start. We'll have the dogs barking around the world. But
wow.
They're really happy. But you know, when you say no to some of those things and you're like, well, I could do it, but when you're doing it just for money, the juice is never worth the squeeze. Like
I've done that so many times.
Yeah. And it just makes me feel meh, and I was exhausted and I didn't come out of it feeling energized. And it was a struggle to complete that project or whatever it is, because it just didn't flow, because it wasn't like what I was meant to be doing. It wasn't authentic. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you're having to force it, and the forcing it is exhausting. And so now on top of forcing it, you're exhausted, and it creates this cycle. And it's like, you cannot be a happy, fulfilled, content person when you're in that cycle.
And you're not turning up as your best self in that for the person that has engaged you, that you're working with. You're not turning up. You're just kind of dialing it in, and they deserve your full self because that's what they wanted.
Absolutely.
It doesn't work for anyone.
Yeah. But, you know, part of, you know, talking about coming out later in life, you know, I'm very much married to a cishet, monogamous man. And I came out to him as pansexual a couple of years ago. And I kind of kept it not on the DL because I was ashamed. I was just like, oh, I don't need to talk about this. And this year I'm like, no, I am showing up with all my rainbow stuff and all my queer glory. It is all over my website, but it's just, that is me claiming another piece of myself, in the process of becoming the most me that I can be.
And that's something that did really intrigue me. And I was about to head down that path with you about, you know, pivot. But well, I think that's an important sort of part of your journey, is that in your embracing you is like, you know, some people would look at that and go, but how can you be this while you're in this life? Like, you need to choose.
Yeah.
But, you know, if it ultimately works for you and your dude, and, you know, like you said on your website, even like, he's your person that you want to do life with.
Absolutely.
If that works for everybody, then you don't, you know, one of the things I struggle with when I was first coming out, and I feel like you're coming out every day anyway, but is like, you're expected to be in a box of some sort. So what, you know, and I did one of my early podcast episodes was on all the labels, and it's like, well, I'm just me though. Like I'm Lisa. Like, I don't, and just because I identify as this, does that mean I can only date these sort of people? Like, there's so many rules. And then you've got the part of the community that may have come out earlier or has never had, you know, a heterosexual, you know, relationship to navigate, and they're like, well, you're not really a lesbian. It's like,
but yeah, like, I can't please anyone here.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know where I fit, and that and that's a struggle as well. And some of these, you know, I see the stories that people post in some of these groups that I'm in, and they're like, I don't know if this is right, or, you know, I'm questioning, but I don't know how to talk to somebody about it. And we're like, well, well, I'm like, well, we need more, which is part of the reason I started the podcast, is to not only tell my story, but tell other stories, because if someone can see that someone else has done the journey and it might be different to theirs, but they've come out into the light, oh, there is a path there.
The possibility exists.
I'm not Neil Armstrong. I'm not the first person on the moon. Like, this has been done. So I've just got to follow some of those crumbs that they've left behind. But we need people to talk authentically about it, not from a sales perspective, but authentically about, hey, this is the bits that really sucked and were messy and complicated. And these are the bits, though, that when you get through that stuff, it's really beautiful and amazing and empowering.
Yeah, it's priceless. I would go through everything in my life all over again, all of it, if it brought me to where I am right now.
Which, in essence, that's what it did. Like, I was talking in my last episode about self-love and giving ourselves grace. Like, my wife and I often talk about that we wish we'd met like 30 years ago and then we would have had a much longer life together. But we would have fucked this up royally. Like, we were not in a place where we're ready. So all of our life experiences and the trauma and the ups and downs got us to a point now where we can nurture and appreciate what we have and really be intentional about it, rather than taking it for granted and just I said we wouldn't have had a longer life. We would have had a shorter life together than what we potentially have now, because it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But, there are no mistakes in this world. We wind up, I believe, exactly where you're supposed to be. And something I talked about was that when you, as a late in life coming out, all of that stuff you bring with you is powerful, and it should be celebrated, not like, oh, I've got all this baggage because I've had this other life before. But those experience and lessons taught us that we can be resilient and get through anything, and we can solve problems, we can find solutions, because we've all been through hard, messy shit in our lives.
Absolutely.
Whereas if I come out at 17 or 18, I don't have any of that life experience to let me know how I'm going to cope with it, how I'm going to handle it. How do I handle getting my heart broken or putting myself out there or whatever? Different struggle, and I'm not dismissing it, but it's, we should celebrate the journey that brought us to this point and go, how do I see those as strengths? And like, my struggle is my superpower. Like, that's the thing that's going to push me forward, rather than being ashamed or trapped by that shame about my life before. Like, it's so freeing when you can step out of that space and own your stuff, all of your stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's been a big part of I have a feeling we have some pretty similar stories around that. I like to say I'm stupidly good. Again, I can be very self-deprecating and in the most loving way possible.
Yeah.
Stupidly good, finding the silver linings. And that is not to put the toxic positivity lens on it. Like, I will tell you, I will go into gory, gritty detail what I went through if someone asked me, right? Because consent is important.
Yes.
I don't sugarcoat how hard I've had to work, and that I had support as I was doing it, right? Yeah. I can't imagine going through what I went through, getting to the other side without the support I had from people who believed in me, even though I was an absolute dick to them.
Yeah.
So many times, like my husband.
Yeah.
He's an absolute saint for what I put him through. Yeah. But it's like, we're handed a bunch of, I say it on my website, bunch of shit sandwiches. And it's like, how do you polish that turd? Because here's the thing. I am a stubborn cuss. I am not going to let that stuff stop me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to act in spite of it. Right. And it's like a giant FU to all the stuff that went down, all the stuff in my life. I am choosing to rise above it. And that takes a certain mindset, and it takes a certain level of support to build that safety within yourself to be able to do it.
Yep. And the surest way to get me to do something is to tell me I can't do it. That's guaranteed, 100%.
Guaranteed.
I'm going to
you're going to count me out. Yeah, you're going to discount me. Watch me.
Watch me do it. And it's, when you and something you said really interesting there is that, you know, having, like, you talk about the support you had to get through whatever, you know, the mess that you went through. And people don't often either A, recognize that they've had that support, but B, don't talk about it, whether it's therapy or whatever. Like, I mean, in 2010, you know, I had my first relationship with a woman, and I told maybe 2 or 3 friends because I was a complete basket case when everything like fell apart. I was just completely just like, but because I was in the closet and still married, like there's nothing I could do. Like I couldn't talk about that. And I went to therapy, you know, at that time. And, you know, people don't talk about the fact that how powerful therapy can be, as in it's changing a bit, but people still see that as a weakness, is like, well, what's wrong with you? If you, you know, I remember when I said to my mother that I'm going to see a therapist to talk about some childhood trauma stuff around like my father and everything. Turns out I probably need to talk about her, but anywho. And she's like, well, what do you want to rehash that stuff for? I'm like, well, I'm not, but I need to find a way to, I said, nothing's going to change, but I need to find a way to process it and understand what happened and my part in that and why I don't have to own that. And she's like, but what's the point? Like, you know, it's, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to talk to you about that anymore. But it was,
you're not the one to talk to about
that. You're not my person. But, you know, being open, and that's what I've tried to do on the podcast, is just, and I started last year, almost a year ago, someone had encouraged me to write my book of my life. And they said, someone who is where you're at needs to read your story. And I'm like, okay. And I sat down and it was terrible. Like it was such a struggle because I hadn't owned my story. There were so many things I wanted to leave out and cut out and change. And then when I started this podcast, and I just like, well, I'm just going to talk about the hard things, because so now I've gone back to writing and it's suddenly become a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
Because now I'm not like filtering going, well, if I don't talk about that bit, but then where does this bit fit in? But even digging into having a tribe and having professional, like, you know, I had good friends in my circle. I had my therapist, you know, in the last few years, I'd started working with my coach on my business, which turned out that, you know, the gym I was running was to create an identity so people wouldn't see all the other stuff that was wrong with me.
Sure.
Assume that as my identity. And they knew that I was gay before I even, you know, really flipped it and admitted it to them. And they're like, thanks for coming. We've been waiting. And once I started
I was going to say real quick, that's what my daughter said to me when she and I were talking about it. She's like, Mom, I actually thought you were a lesbian. I'm like, oh, okay. No, I'm not. But no, you know, thanks. I guess it's not a surprise.
And, you know, the amount of people when I came out to them, like in my close circle, were either like, well, duh, or, oh, cool. Are you happy? Are you safe? Are you okay? You know, I had like 2 or 3 people that were like, oh. And so then I'm like, I'm going to move you to some outer circles now. Thank you. Still love you, but you're over here now. But I've found that and people who come back to me after they've listened to the podcast or seen it or whatever, and they're like, I wish this had been here 6 years ago to understand it's okay to talk about these things in that way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the more we talk about it, the less it is scary, and that it's okay to have therapy. It's okay to not have to do everything on your own. Like we don't have to embrace and live in suffering.
Yeah. You don't have to be strong all the time.
Yeah. Oh, and that's amazing. I love how Apple just does stuff to us. I think it was celebrating, but it's very appropriate. But we definitely don't have to be strong all the time, but we feel like if we can get stuck in the suffering and feel like, oh, this should be hard. Well, parts of it will be hard, but it doesn't have to be if you reframe that you're thinking about it as a this is strength for me. This is showing strength. You don't have to suffer. Yeah. And just because you come out late in life doesn't mean you're doomed to a life of never finding anyone or having terrible dating experiences or anything. Like you can have a happily ever after, but you have to be willing to embrace that and own that and like, seek that out intentionally rather than just waiting for,
something to happen.
Yeah, someone you open your door one day and UPS have delivered you the perfect partner. Like that's
yeah. Well, and that's, I very much live in the land of what is possible. And I don't, I had a role model in my mom who did that for me. She was not a great mom, but she was a fascinating woman. And she did not find her happiness until her late 60s, but she never gave up reinventing herself. And I mean, her story is absolutely heartbreaking and tragic, but she, and I'd say so let's say 68 and she passed at 73. So she had 5 years, but they were the best damn 5 years of her life. Right.
And you wouldn't trade anything else for that.
Absolutely. She found the love of her life in those 5 years. I just got goosebumps thinking about it.
Yeah, wow.
But that has always been my thing. What is possible, right? And when I see people kind of give up hope, that it's so tragic. And it's like, I understand life has dealt you a bunch of shit sandwiches. It absolutely, I get it, where you're not going to gloss over that. But what if you turn your attention to, and what is possible for me, right? And just open the mind to, well, what could this look like? And that's part of my story is I literally in 2015, when these two things happened, I had the decision, do I continue down the path of becoming this bitter old woman, or do I reinvent myself? Because by that point, I had no idea who I was. I had no idea what I wanted in life. I had no idea other than I had this vision of me at 80 who is vibrant, connected, lively, still being a daredevil, still, laughing at inappropriate jokes and sexual innuendos. And I'm like, that's who I want to be. And my job is iterating into her. It's why I have pink hair, because, I see my 80-year-old self. She is rocking pink hair and like this well-worn black motorcycle jacket. So I'm on the hunt for a vintage motorcycle jacket because I'm like, Jen at 54, I can do that, Yeah.
And it's just understanding that, life has served you up those shit sandwiches, but I don't have to keep carrying them around in my backpack.
Yeah.
Because they're getting old and moldy and stale. Like, we can't change it, but you can let them go and make room for something better. And we're not dismissing what happened or how hard it was.
Yep.
But, I feel like with my mother, she's lived a life of resentment. She has had a very hard life. I'm not going to lie. Like, she had bad experiences with my father and he was very abusive and everything. But, when I was 6, she booted him out. Like in 1980, that's a really tough thing to do. And fought like fuck to keep a roof over her head and food on the table. Like we didn't have much, but we had what we needed. And she would do whatever it took to keep us in, the school she wanted us to go to. There was a private school to go to that. So she cleaned the school so she didn't have to pay school fees and she did what she had to do. But, she has no joy in life. Like if I say, oh yeah, well, I'm ducking off here for the afternoon. Oh, it's a good life you have. And it's just resentful of other people. I'm like, well, she resents that I have opportunities and freedoms. And it's taken me a long time to realize that's her perspective. But she made her choices in life to do, and she wouldn't undo those choices to take care of us kids and do things. But then once we're all adults, you have other choices that you can make that are going to get you, rather than always being the victim in life and always like you ring her up and go, oh, how's things? Oh, this or that. Like there's no.
It's so woe is me. And it's like, that is a choice, right? It's because like you said, you can't undo what happened. You can't undo the past. You cannot rewrite the past, right? You can choose to take the path of woe is me. Why does this always happen? And I see this from so many people and it breaks my heart. You can also choose the path of, well, what now?
What next?
Can I do to make it better? What next? And it's, not the pie in the sky, make it realistic, but also open yourself up to the possibility. What if I'm 54. I want to live till I'm like 94. I have a very set date in mind. No. But I think of the endless possibilities, scenarios, and opportunities in front of me. and it gets me excited. And I think about one of my favorite, I collect stories of older people doing really cool stuff because it motivates me, right?
Yep.
The woman who published her debut novel at 80, Jane
Yes.
Campbell, Cat Brushing, about, I believe it's the erotic lives of 13 older women. She published her first book at 80. And you're telling me at 60, you're like, oh, my life is done. I'm washed up. Like, what? And I have empathy for these people because it tells me there is something that they're stuffing deep down inside. And like your mom was like, why would you go to therapy? Well, that's why you go to therapy, right? Because that trauma is stored in your body and you are not escaping it.
100%. And
sorry, I get like on my soapbox.
No. I'm 100% on board that, and it manifests in so many ways that you don't even realize.
Absolutely.
How it holds you back. But it doesn't even have to be like, you've got a very clear vision of where you want to be in like 40 years, like, and who you want to be.
But I don't know next year. I have no idea.
But it doesn't even have to be that. I remember one of the lessons I learned when I was managing the gym. So a member would quit and I'd be like, fuck my life and depressed and like sulk about it for a week and feel like I'd failed them and so on and so forth. And then I don't know what gave me the realization. It's something somebody said. And I was like, so while I'm sulking about that for a week, I'm doing nothing else to move the business forward in that week. Like there's stuff not getting done. So I started giving myself 5 minutes. It's like you can cry, kick, scream, sulk, whatever you want. But when that timer goes off, you need to do one thing that's going to move you out of this space. So I would write an email to a lead or follow up on a thing or whatever. And it can be the smallest thing that moves you out of that stuck space. And then it's the power of compounding interest, like one thing, two things, and two things. So if people are listening to this and think, oh, yeah, but I don't have a big life, just do one thing. Go and sit out in your backyard in bare feet and get off your phone and look around like a child and look at a butterfly or a blade of grass and be completely lost for 5 minutes. That will instantly make your life better and get you out of that stuck, as in, Sharon, sometimes I'll get stuck in a space and Sharon will say to me, can you get off the cross? They need the timber back.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I'm going to use that with my husband.
And I was like, okay, well said. Yes.
Okay. Well, there we go.
But straight away you go, oh, yeah, I'm stuck.
I've put myself on the cross. Yeah.
Yeah, because I can make, and as we've said, like we can make a choice is like, well, that sucked, but what can I control?
Yeah.
And what can I change? And ultimately we're in control of our story. If you want to be a badass 94-year-old with your motorbike jacket and your hot pink hair,
I do.
You get to do that because you go, that's who I'm going to be.
Yeah.
And even like I had my hair cut a couple of weeks ago and it was like way shorter than I thought. And I was like, oh, this is, maybe it's too much like a dude's haircut. And Sharon's like, what's a dude's haircut? Like, what is that? It doesn't exist. You've had a haircut. Like that's, do what makes you happy. And I did a video on TikTok the other week about that's one of the best things about coming out late in life or embracing whatever your story is. It doesn't have to be coming out as gay. It can be coming out as this is who I am as a person. You get to embrace whatever you want. Like there are no rules for you. That's the power. Like you can go, you know what? I'm going to wear boots with pajama pants and that's my look.
Absolutely.
Go for it. If that makes you happy, you can do that. Yeah. Like we're not 5 anymore when, our parents are saying, well, you're going to wear this outfit today. And you're not at school where you have to wear this outfit. It's like, you do you, boo.
Yeah, you do you, boo.
Yeah. And you can have control over it. But I think we get stuck in our stories and we feel like at times that I actually said to somebody yesterday, I said, you probably feeling right now like you're on a bus and Sandra Bullock's driving and Canoe Reeves is, helping her and there's a bomb on the bus. What I want is for you to be driving the bus. Like life isn't happening to you, you can do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have very similar philosophies, obviously, on this. And one thing that you said is, Sharon, is that your wife?
Yep.
Yeah. She was able to point out to you what you weren't able to see in the moment. And that goes back to the support, right? Whether it is a therapist, a friend, like someone that you trust implicitly to say, hey, when you notice me doing XYZ, here's what you can say or do that's going to help me snap out of it. And I love that you give yourself 5 minutes. I typically give myself a day.
Yep.
I now you've challenged me to the 5-minute thing, and I got to do that. No, I'm kidding. But that's what it is, right? It's that being intentional and being like, okay, I'm feeling a certain way. You know, I'm going to give myself the grace to kind of feel what I need to feel, but then I'm going to move on. And I talk with clients all the time about like, what is the next teeny tiniest, easiest action? Because we overthink. It's what our brains do, right? And that's almost the survival part of our brain, because our brain doesn't like change. It wants to keep us safe. And so it's like, break it down to its littlest thing. And like you said, take your shoes off and go stand in the grass. Like that will reset, that will help ground you and give you that, and like take a breath. And it's like, okay, now I can go do the thing. Right. But you have to be aware of that so that you can catch it. Right.
Yeah. And it's being, you know, sometimes we've got like goggles on, which are just covered with our own bullshit, and we can't see it. And we don't understand that we could just wipe it away and move forward. We just keep going through this murky mess. It's like, I can't see. Take the goggles off, idiot. Oh, look, here you go. But it's, you know, I was talking to somebody yesterday about, you know, our brains are amazing and they're fascinating and they do all sorts of fantastic things, but they haven't evolved beyond prehistoric times, because when we are stressed and overwhelmed, it still thinks there's a woolly mammoth coming to eat us.
Yeah, and that's scary.
And it doesn't know that it's just my boss was being, you know, an asshole, or at a fight with the kids or the partner or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's still sending you those prehistoric responses. So when we break things down, it kind of goes, oh no, I'm safe. I'm cool.
I'm actually okay.
Yeah. I'm not up a tree. There's no saber-toothed tiger. We're all good to go.
Yeah. I'm not in a famine. I do have food in the cupboard. Yeah. It's not, the tiger is not going to jump out at the bush and try to eat me.
But we need to make it simple for our brain, because they're lizard brains, is that what's the next thing that's going to show? Well, if you're standing in the grass, you can't be in any danger. Cool, I'm going to dial down your cortisol and everything. And suddenly we can have that perspective and clarity. I mean, I'm fortunate in one hand that Sharon is a counselor by trade. So we're always talking about our feelings.
Nice.
And
I love that.
She will look at me and I'm like, don't you therapize me? And she goes, what are you feeling right now? I'm like, nothing. I'm watching TV. What do you think? Nothing. And I'm like, don't make me cry. I don't really have time to cry right now. Like, what's happening?
I didn't give you consent to therapy me.
Yeah. And I always say, stop therapizing me. And then I start to cry. She goes, so there was something there. What, you know, but we will. Like, damn it. I went 46 and a half years of not feeling feelings and pushing everything to the side.
Yep.
Whereas now, like, I'll cry at the drop of a hat now. And I said, well, I feel like now that you've opened the lid on the soft drink bottle, I've got 46 and a half years of stuff. Because sometimes she's like, why are you crying? And I'm like, I don't know. I just am. Could be perimenopause.
I didn't get tucked in when I was 9 and I was scared because it was thundering out.
And that's the thing. It's like all these emotions we don't feel. But then when you have someone,
they're still there,
you can trust, who will then pick those things out and do it in a mindful way.
In a way that makes your body, your nervous system feel safe to do it.
Yeah. And it's not that, well, we're just going to shake up the Coke bottle and take the lid off and walk away. It's like, okay, tell me what you're feeling, what started it, and then work through and go, okay.
Yeah.
And it's not always a big thing. Sometimes it's just like I think it's my hormones today. They're just running right. And that's okay. But instead of like, well, what are you crying for? I'll give you something to cry for. It's like, you know, okay, well, just let it pass and then we'll just go about our day. Like, and it's not a big deal and it's okay. But having that support and that person or people that can do that is incredibly, you know, powerful. I have restarted therapy again because like my mother's just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And we have a very complex relationship. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to need to talk to somebody to figure out how I can treat her with compassion and empathy, because we don't have an I love you relationship. Like, it's probably been 49 years and 10 months since my mother said, I love you. Like that's not been our family dynamic. But now it's like, I need to be empathetic and compassionate to her journey. And I'm like, well, shit, I don't have the skills to do that without being, because our relationship's always been defensive and combative. She relates to me by having digs and bites, and I'm defensive. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work now when she doesn't know what day it is. And I can't be impatient with that. So I was like, okay, well, I need to talk to somebody about that. And that's okay to understand that I don't have all the answers. But I think we expect that we should, and we should have like, why am I stuck in this place? I should know how to get out of it. I should know better. And, you know, should is a word I think that needs to be erased from the English. Terrible.
Yeah. Because how far is that shoulding getting you? Yeah. Right? Is it getting you where you want to be? Is it helping you feel the way you want to feel about your life? No, I would argue I'd get in a fist fight almost and say, no, it's not. Right?
It is. It's complete opposite, because as soon as you think I should, you either become resentful or feel crap about yourself because you're not.
Right.
Well, there are no shoulds. There are get tos, and there are,
what do I want to? What do I
choose?
Yeah. Like, I need to do my taxes in the next week, because I did the extension and they're coming due. I need to. I don't want to, but I need to. Right. I'm not, I should do them. Like, no, I need to. Right.
And it becomes a thing is that also that I get to, because I have this amazing thriving business.
Absolutely.
And if I didn't, I wouldn't have this opportunity.
To pay thousands of dollars.
So that's good and bad, isn't
it?
Yay. But I think, you know, something I think that might be powerful to dig in with you a little bit is for people who are at the point of coming out late in life, whether it be, you know, women, that's mostly my audience, and you know, there's actually, it's really funny, this week I got a new member in our school community, and it's a dude. And I'm like, hey, how did you find us? He goes, listen, if this is just for lesbians, he said, but I feel like these are my people. And he's like, you know, I'm 63. I've come out to my wife, but not really to many other people. But he said, I feel like lesbians are my tribe. I said, you are very welcome here. Like, sounds like you're our people too. Like, I'm not. But, you know, so it can be anybody. And they're sitting there feeling stuck and lost in that space of like, how do I take the next step to figure out who I am? What would you say to those people as not as an advice thing, but as a thought bubble?
Oh, I like that. A thought bubble. You know, so much of my story, again, is around that figuring out who I wanted to be, right? And that's where I started. Because again, when my particular journey, I'd had the rug swept out from under me in a very big way, and I did not know who I was, right? And it's, well, who do I want to be? And I think that at any given moment, it goes back to choice and autonomy. I get to choose who that person is, right? I don't know who I'm going to be a year from now, but I know how I want to feel in as I go about my day, right? I know that meaningful relationships are very important to me, right? I go back to what is your definition of success at this point of time in your life? You know, the how do I want to feel? Like, what is the most important to you? And then what are those teeny tiny actions that you can start taking to bring more of that in? It's, you know, our lives don't like just automatically change overnight. Like I said, from 2015 till earlier this year, like that was my deep, heavy work. I'll always have work to do because I'm human, right? But it took me 9 years. It didn't happen overnight, but I made incremental changes that helped me go from self-loathing to, you know, a couple of years into that being like, whoa, I like myself, to now I'm like, fuck yeah, I like, I feel like I am the shit, right? And I want everyone to feel that because it feels so good, right? But it's getting like tactical and tangible and detailed, like regardless of the past, what do I want going forward? And then how do I make little adjustments to get more of that, right? It could look like, I mean, one of mine was I learned self-mothering and bought myself a weighted blanket, right? That when I feel the need for a mom's hug, I bring out my weighted blanket, right? And it's just, this is a little embarrassing. I have this granny flannel nightgown. It is hideous. It's huge.
It sounds awesome.
It's amazing. It is uglier than sin. But when I put that on, I feel held and nurtured. Someone might be like, oh, that's so weird. And it's like, okay, but you know what? It gives me exactly what I need so that I can be my best self, right? I'm not going to judge myself for what I need. I'm going to work really damn hard to give that to myself.
Yep. And it's
however it looks.
Yeah. And, it's for somebody else, it might be sitting down watching Friends from the very beginning. That's cool.
Absolutely.
Whatever it is for you. But it's being okay with that. I can be whoever I want to be. And I keep coming back to this thing that I say a lot is like, your soul knows who you are.
Absolutely.
And like, even if you haven't dug around to know what your values really are, like we talked earlier, like you don't have the value, money is not your driver. And when you start to live in alignment with your inherent values, suddenly decisions become a lot easier about, well, who do I want to be? Well, and like, you value close relationships and personal relationships. So naturally, that's what you're going to gravitate to being that sort of person. If you really sit and figure out what matters to me,
right? What matters?
It's very easy for me to then go, well, who do I want to be? Like when I was married, and he's a tremendous guy, and we're still best friends and all that sort of stuff. And people don't understand that. They're like, it's weird. You left him. Like, why? I went, yeah, but it doesn't have to be a shitstorm of animosity if you're adulting. And, I was what I thought was what you had to be a wife and a functioning member of society, and you had to work hard, you had to hustle and grind. And that's what our life kind of was about paying the bills and doing the thing. Like there was no other sort of stuff. And then when I could embrace who I was, and I really looked at what mattered to me, it's like connection and experiences. And, I used to buy, new shoes every time Reebok announced a new CrossFit shoes. And because I was filling gaps for that, that 1 minute I felt special because I had the shoes and I probably had them before everybody else. And I'm like, well, this is cool. And then that would pass really quickly. But then when I started my life with Sharon, I was like, I don't need to buy anything, because she's like, oh, do you want to get those new shoes? I went, no, I don't need them.
I'm good.
Because I don't value stuff now. Like I'm not filling gaps with stuff, and understanding what makes you successful is not your house or what you have in it. It's, who you are. And it's like, well, what's important to me? And it's, us intentionally connecting and us, being together and having experiences. One of her cousins mentioned on one of our Facebook posts the other day, they're like, it's so inspiring how you two find adventure in everything. And I thought about it. I went, we'll be in the car going somewhere. I said, well, that was an adventure this afternoon. And nothing's a big deal, but it's just adventure. It's like, like we make the best of whatever time has dealt us in that day.
Yeah. And I think that, we're taught, and I'm in the US, I don't know how it is in your part of the world, but we're taught that success does go to the material things. So we don't stop and ask ourselves, we're not taught how to ask ourselves, like, what do I actually want? Who do I want to be? And, when I came to the conclusion that deep, meaningful relationships were one of my core values, it was, if you remember back, I shared my story from my mom was that I was not a good person, right? Like she literally warned my husband when we were dating, she's not a very good person, right? So like that story was strong. And so it's not that I all of a sudden went from, I'm going to have deep, meaningful relationships to having those deep, meaningful relationships. But it was that seed I needed of this is what I want. And then my work became, who do I need to be? What do I need to shift in myself? What do I have to believe in myself? What do I have to heal in myself so that I feel worthy of that connection with others, right? And again, it took a couple of years, but I kept at it because it was that important to me, right? And now it's just who I am. I don't have to think about it. I draw people to me, the right people, and I know how to form those connections. I don't have to work at it anymore, but I did for a very long time.
And you've got to be okay with sitting in that space to go, who am I really? And we're often taught that if we think about what makes us happy, that's selfish. Like what what do I need and what makes me happy? Whereas you need to do that. Like, what will make Lisa happy? And on more than just a superficial level, like what will make me happy? And, I used to, feel guilty if I went and had a nap in the day.
Right.
Whereas Sharon's like, are you having a nap today? Because I said, why? She
Yeah.
goes, well, you can. Like, and I say, oh, I feel bad. I've napped for 2 hours. She goes, so you clearly needed it.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. We'll do whatever we have to do. So it's giving yourself permission to do what you need to do in that time. And whether that's, you know what, I need to own my coming out because this thing is weighing on me, or I need to change my job or have that hard conversation. You deserve to do the thing that you need to do for you.
Yeah. The way I look at it too is that I have a responsibility to the younger generations. I have 3 children. I don't want them burnt out. I don't want them emotionally unavailable. I don't want them questioning their life choices and miserable and hiding it behind a fake smile and false bravado. Why on earth would I want that for my children? Why would I want that for younger generations? Sorry, I'm getting on a soapbox.
That's okay.
I feel very passionate about this. Why would I want that? And if I don't want that, then I have to model what it takes to be emotionally, mentally, physically well, right?
Yeah.
That's the world I want to live in, is a world of people that want to be that, right? So I'm going to model that. Again, I fuck up all the time.
Yeah.
But it's the grace and the saying, like just the other day, I said something to a friend. I was like, wait a sec. I don't like that I said that. And I said, I'm really sorry that I said that. That's not who I'm choosing to be, right? Showing myself grace and compassion and being like, oh, I kind of screwed up there, but I'm human, own it and pivot, bam, done.
And we move on with it. We don't have to then
I'm not
throwing
like,
it in our backpack.
I'm so bad. I'm just no, I'm human. I make mistakes. I'm learning. I'm growing. I'll always learn and grow, right?
Yeah. And it's really pertinent what you said there, is like, this is the world you want to live in. So you need to role model that. And,
exactly,
that's why I'm, now really embracing telling my story, because the more people that come back to me and are like, oh, this was really resonated, or, oh my God, I didn't think someone else felt that way. It's like other people need to know that it's okay, and that it's messy and it's confusing and complicated. But if I want a world where people can experience the freedom that I have, like,
right,
I would give that away by the truckload if I could.
Yeah.
And
I so wish
that is seeing me do that.
Yeah. I so wish I was independently wealthy. Like I said, I would do this to my dying day. This is a hill I will die on. If my mother-in-law wants to call it selfish, bless her heart. I'm not trying to change her, right? Yeah. But I'm also not going to let her opinion stop me. I used to, but I'm not, right?
Yeah.
If selfish is being an emotionally, mentally, physically well human being who does good work in the world and is a good human being to others and herself, if that's what selfish is, yeah, I'm selfish. I'll own it.
Yeah. And it's, that it's not stopping you, and that you can own it, as in, we're not being selfish as I want to hoard all the resources for me. No, it's just about, I want to do things that I know will make things better for other people.
Yep.
And we have to pay bills. We have to eat. Everybody does.
Absolutely.
But you know what? We can still share the power of our stories and help people, and the right people connect with us. And you don't have to just fit into this box of a 9 to 5 and do the thing. Like, you can have freedom and want other people to have that as well. But for them to have it, they need to see that you can have it, and
it's possible, and they have to want it for themselves, right?
Correct.
We can't change anyone. People who aren't ready to take action. That is one of my, like, when you come to me and you hire me, it is because you are hungry. You have reached the point where you are hungry for action. Because I've worked with people that attracting the wrong people that weren't there yet. And I'm like, it's like pulling teeth. And I'm like, that I can't do that. That is not where my skills come in. But once you're ready to take that action, like, I am your person. I will get you there as fast and efficient as you want to go.
Yeah. And that's the powerful thing is, you know, like you said, you're not going to try and change your mother-in-law.
No, I'm not going to convince.
Like, that's not our job to sell to people that,
right.
You know, we don't need to sell our philosophy to somebody because the people that get it. And it's okay if you don't get it.
Yeah.
I still love you and I still care about you, but
absolutely,
we don't have to engage on this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's
we can
how
talk
I've
about
like
something else. We can talk about the weather.
Yeah, I've moved people to outer circles where I go, hey, your kids are still cute or your grandkids are cute.
Yeah.
But they know nothing about my life and I don't have to involve them in the day-to-day. And that's cool because they clearly said, but I don't have to try and politic to get them over to my side. Like, no, that's cool because I've got the people I need that fill that need, and the right people will come into my life.
Yeah. I think for the folks listening in, like one of the key takeaways, if I were to leave you with one, is what bits and pieces of yourself aren't you owning? And what can you do, teeny tiny action, to start owning more of that? Because I have to tell you, I finally, I'm going to say 98%. I own myself 98%, right? Because I always want to leave room for more. But doing that earlier this year, the trajectory of my life has changed. And I don't like that saying, but it's like everything changed and nothing changed. What changed was how I perceive myself, and that influences how I show up in the world for others and myself. And and people notice that, right? People notice that energy. And that's what I see in you as well. But like, what can you start to own a little bit more of yourself?
And it doesn't have to be the big scary stuff. It's just, you just start with something. And I mean, we all learned to ride a bike with little steps. We learned to walk with little baby steps. Just take that first little step. So,
it took me 10 years to own wanting to get a septum, to give myself permission. I got it a couple of months ago and I'm like, I was born with this, but it took me 10 years to get there. So don't expect that you're going to get it overnight. Some things you will. Some things take time. Are you going to be tenacious? Is it important enough to you?
And it's give yourself the grace to take the time that you need.
Absolutely.
There's no like, well, you have to do your coming out journey or whatever it is by this time. Like, nope. Your journey is your journey, but embrace your journey. And, you know, if it's right now, then great. If it's in 10 years, great. You'll get there if you start embracing the journey and actually start the journey.
Yeah. And I used to be so impatient with myself, and that really didn't get me anywhere. No. Right. When I started easing up on myself, all of a sudden things could happen.
Yeah. It's funny now. People will see a photo of me and they're like, you're so much lighter. I can just see in a photo, like your face is like you are. And even when I look at photos of me 10, 20 years ago, like I'm smiling, but I'm like, oh, look, that is not. Whereas now it just like, I don't even think about it. And I'm just me in a photo or whatever. And it, you know, people are picking up on that energy now. And I said, well, it's because I'm, you know, I'm having my needs met. I'm meeting my own needs as well as, you know, having them in a relationship. And I have friends who are 100% around me and I have the right supports, and I'm just owning me. Like I'm just being me.
Yeah.
For the first time in 49 years and 10 months. Like that's, you know, that I'm me now.
Yeah. And so it goes back to my favorite F word is freedom. And I used to have a very different definition of freedom. And now I realize it was one I was never going to be able to reach. Right. So I'd already set myself up for failure. But now where I am now, and you mentioned this earlier too, the freedom, this is what I wanted. I didn't know I could have this. Until I started doing the work to get there. I didn't think it was possible, but I held out hope, right? That it was possible.
And it is, like anything that you want is possible. It's just what you're prepared to do in the work, whether it be actual physical work or your inner work to get you to that point. It's, you know, there's people in life who had the worst possible start to life and they've been the most successful humans and multi-gazillionaires. And then you've got people that had everything handed to them who've turned into, you know, nothing and deeply unhappy. So, you know, it's not about our circumstances. It's, you know, what we choose to do. So I have really loved this chat. We could probably talk for 2 or 4 hours.
I know. People don't want to hear us ramble.
Where can people find you? And I'll put all the links in the show notes as well. If they want to get some of the awesome that is Jen in their daily life, where can people find you?
yourbestdamnlife.com.
Yeah. And that's such an exciting website to go to. Like when I had a look at it, I was like, I just felt better for reading the stuff on the website. I was like, oh, this makes me happy.
This is me giving myself permission to be slightly chaotic, slightly wordy, slightly salty. Like, yeah.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
It's me.
Yeah. And I'll put the links to your Instagram and Threads, and you know,
Awesome.
Threads seems to be the place where the cool kids hang
Love
out.
Threads.
So good. But thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you coming on, and I feel like we'll have many more chats anyway.
Absolutely. You will be on my show. We're going to talk about and get you scheduled in.
Perfect. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you. Conversation. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.